So the next frontier. So when you think of AI that is not agents, and I'll define agents here in a second, it feels like a chatbot because we all had chatbots. So it's one prompt, one response, and a thing happens. So I mean, a lot of people feel like AI is a glorified chatbot. But where agents is going is basically saying, I want an assistive team that can do multiple steps. I want you to draft and summarize and analyze. I want you to take multiple steps, work in a semi-autonomous way, right? So agents is the term for AI that can learn what a task is and be able to assist in actually executing the task, as opposed to just simply receiving a prompt and doing a closure. And it can adapt based on what it got. So agentic AI doesn't just answer, it iterates, right? It does work. You can say things like evaluate vendor responses, act, pull documents, compare, and it has memory across steps. Not just summarize proposal, but run an evaluation against the policy and the process, right? So I've taught it to do things. So it's able to act as if it was a teammate and not just wait for you as a human being, but it can take certain steps and then come back to you as a human being. So when you hear agentic AI, that's the new hot thing, right? That's what everyone is focused on. That's what all software is based on. So here, like for a client, we built a contract amendment agent that is able to drop in the latest amendment. It asks certain questions, and it knows it's driving to this outcome, right? It knows this is the shape that it needs to get to in order to process and create a contract amendment. So it can ask questions, and since it knows the destination, it can critically assess how far away is this document from where I need to go and ask the questions in order to complete the exercise. So as opposed to it just simply being, oh, well, you asked me a question, and here's what you got, right? It knows the destination, and it can work iteratively on it. So some contract amendments may be really close, some may be really far. So asking questions like, are there conflicts? Are there things that are missing? I'm supposed to have a thing for who the authority is, right? And I don't have that. If you give me 4 additional pieces of information, I can create this amendment. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's more in that agentic shape. So it's using coding and a little bit more sophistication. I mean, this may be a little bit beyond, but I said it was the next frontier, right? Okay, so then agentic orchestration is multiple agents working together. So maybe you've taught one agent how to do a deep research exercise and another agent how to kind of critically assess for failures or standards, et cetera. So you can have different little buckets that they know how to do work. And then they're working together towards an outcome. So, you might have an intake agent, a market research agent, a value, and each one of those would be coded and created a little different way so that they work in a different way. Imagine like we have three or four different agents that have been taught how to do different types of research or different kinds of work. So we send the task off from the prompt into each one of those little agents to where then they're each going to do work in their own style. I've even seen people code them, like train them to where they have the names of the characters from The Office, right? So like almost like literally like a team that's doing things, right? So then it's going to aggregate, and now that it's aggregated, then there's different agents that are able to test and say, against my standards, which is drunk and white, or my standards, which is the legal, it got there, or it didn't. So each one of the agents can say, well, I'm satisfied, but the last agent, which is the one that does kind of our publishing guidelines, says you're still off. So until it says that it's done, it's going to iterate, right? So we had 3 or 4 agents that were taught how to act in different ways to complete a task. It comes back together, and then we have different agents that are able to say, yes, that meets my standards. No, it doesn't meet my standards, until all 3 of the ones that have been taught how to assess say they're done. The task is not done. At the very least, this isn't something you're going to deploy, but you'll see this in software. You'll see this in specs. People in your office who maybe have access to some of the agentic tools, maybe building stuff. You can also do rapid deployment projects, et cetera. So when will you see this? Do any of you code or have kids who code or kids who are in computer science? Coding and programming changed so dramatically in the last 2 years. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. My middle, who works for me, I have a 45-person company. It's not just like, 3 people and my dog, right? But but he's legit, right? He went to Purdue, which is a top 10 computer science school, and he went in programming. He took almost no AI. This was like 2 years ago, right? He was on, core programming and how to build and architect. And then since he graduated, it has changed so wildly. Nobody who codes anymore just sits down and codes the way they did 2 years ago. Nobody. right? Because the AI is so advanced at doing the coding, all the things that used to be so messy and fussy about coding. Oh, I got this parentheses facing the wrong direction, and it took me 3 hours to figure out why my code wasn't running, or like whatever. It's all gone. So now everyone who codes, I mean, fortunately, my son kind of got like right on the tip of the surfboard, like right before it all started taking off. And then I've thrown him into all this AI stuff, and he's doing great with it. But literally, coding is done in agent style today pretty much ubiquitously. And that has totally flipped upside down everything about that industry, like how much people are paid, what they're expected to do, the skills they're supposed to have. So that was super dramatic. I don't think it's going to be as dramatic for everybody else, just because it's so inherent in why coding is challenging and why certain people are awesome at it and certain people struggle with it. Like agents solve a lot of that problem. So that was completely uprooted and transformed. Many providers, are enabling the development of agents, like OpenClaw is a thing, and like some of the big providers allow us, like Google has a space where they can create agents. So the most important thing, just in the last, I'm almost done, so I apologize for running a couple minutes over. You'll see this in software purchases, right? Like, as you guys have to deal with kind of like assessing certain kind of like software programs, et cetera, like, knowing and understanding this space will be very important, I think, to being able to execute that work. And then you can do rapid innovation projects and either do that with your internal staff or bring in folks to help you do that. Okay, last couple thoughts. Really think of yourselves as knowledge workers, right? Procurement is a knowledge worker job. Procurement, which is everything around the purchasing activity, that is all the other 1,000 things you're expected to do, is 100% a knowledge worker activity. And AI enables knowledge workers. So think of yourself that way, lean into this. And lastly, like, you may say, well, I can't do anything about that because I'm not the CIO, or I'm not in charge, or whatever. True, but you can lead, because leadership is not just about authority, it's about influence, right? So if you're like, hey, here's things I need to do in order to make sure my staff is AI ready, that I have an AI ready workforce, right? Or that we're not wasting time doing little things over and over, that if I built an agent, or if I use AI to do a thing, I could accelerate. That 5 for Friday example, that's not an agent, but in effect it acts as an agent because it's learned over time what the target is, and so therefore it can iterate towards the target. If I didn't have that, I would not be able to continue doing that small function, right? So find something in your shop that is like, hey, if I do this, I can lead. Also, because there's so much data in procurement, the ability to build knowledge stores and do stuff is right there. So even if you're not in charge, that doesn't mean that you can't influence the motion towards the positive outcome. And sometimes people are like, oh, it's so much work. Well, the outcomes of this are so much more than the effort, right? But we perceive the effort of the learning of it or the skills. The outcomes are huge in this. So focus on the outcomes. And I hope that was useful. So thank you, guys.
Hi, it's Dustin Lanier. Thanks for listening. Please find me on LinkedIn for original public sector operations content every week. And please reach out to me if I and my team of procurement professionals at Civic Initiatives can help you be a public procurement change agent.